It's cover. What is vitiligo?
It's a pigment disorder or disease where your body actually starts to attack the pigment cells in your skin. And it's beyond turning white, Larry. You actually are void of color. I simply titled the book was Turning White, but it's void of color. I'm pigmentless in parts of my skin. There you go.
Yeah,
you can see the contrast. Yeah, I'll put both of them up. There you go. So you can see it's completely gone at this point. You can see a little bit of pigment starting right in some of these areas. We can see on my wrist. That's where the pigment starts to come back.
Does it come back?
Well, it's possible. You know, I know the possibility is there. I've talked to people who have regained pigment, and 80% of the people that have this disease respond to treatment in some fashion. And I have responded to treatment before, but as soon as I stopped the treatment, and it was standing in a light booth after putting cream on my body, as soon as I stopped, within weeks, it started to fade again. I don't know if you can imagine looking in the mirror and not seeing you.
You wrote at one point, you said, when I look at myself in the mirror, it's getting harder to see me. I look like a monster.
What did you notice first?
I first got it on my scalp, and then, ironically, I got it on my left hand. I had a few spots on the back of my head, and you can see almost through my hairline that you can see pigment is gone. Spots on my scalp, both sides, and then on my left hand. So when, you know, the most famous gloved one put on his one glove, he has vitiligo as well. I understand why, because I got it on my left hand, and I started to wear one glove when I would do a report.
Does Michael Jackson refer to himself as having vitiligo?
He does. He said it to Oprah Winfrey. He said it to Martin Bashir, a British journalist. He does have vitiligo, and I could not imagine. There's only a few 100,000 people that watch me in Detroit, but being the most famous person on the planet and having this disease, when you look one way on an album cover, but when you're at home, you look like the cover of my book there, it must have been tough to deal with, to have hundreds of millions of people looking at you and having the...
That mysterious transformation from black to white was made famous in the very publicly changing face of Michael Jackson, who says he too suffers from vitiligo.
One glove he used to wear, I used to wear one glove to cover it. So, I mean, I understand all of his struggles.
He's also a man who's been, a black man who's been very criticized for turning himself into a white man, whether he did it or not, the surgeries,
the whole thing. And I can't speak for that, but at least the vitiligo part of Michael Jackson, it's real. I want people to know that it's real, and it's really difficult to deal with. It's like an emotional battlefield to deal with the reaction of people.
People were afraid to shake your hand.
In 1993, nobody understood what it was. Nobody knew anything about vitiligo. The controversy was Michael Jackson kept getting whiter and whiter and whiter and whiter, and nobody understood why. But anybody who knows Michael Jackson will tell you that when you are up close to him, I mean, he has had absolutely no pigmentation in his skin, so you can see all the way through to, you are looking at his veins when you look at his hand. When you look at him, you are seeing through to the blue veins, and they're, you know, very, 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 very apparent. And at first, that's a startling thing, you know. Nobody ever talks about that, but it's kind of, it takes you aback at first. So you're like looking at a person who is almost like translucent. It's like looking through skin. It's like looking through skin. The thing that is most discussed about you, I think, is the fact that the color of your skin is obviously different than it was when you were younger.
Yes.
And so it has caused a great deal of speculation and controversy as to what you have done or are doing. Are you bleaching your skin? And is your skin lighter because you don't like being black?
Okay, number one, as I know of, there is no such thing as skin bleaching. I have never seen it. I don't know what it is.
Well, they used to have those products growing up. I used to hear, always use bleach and glow, but you'd have to have about 300,000 gallons.
Okay, number one, this is the situation. I have a skin disorder that destroys the pigmentation of the skin. It's something that I cannot help, okay? But when people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me.
So it is.
It's a problem for me, okay? I can't control it. okay? But what about all the millions of people? Let's reverse it.
Okay.
What about all the millions of people who sit out in the sun to become darker, to become other than what they are? Nobody says nothing about that.
So when did this start? When did the color of your skin start to change?
Oh boy, I don't. Sometime after Thriller, around Off the Wall Thriller. Sometime
And what did you think? I mean, you.
It's in my family. My father said it's on his side. I can't control it. I don't understand. I mean, it makes me very sad. I don't want to go into my medical history because that's something that's private. But that's the situation here. So please, when people see something like that,
I just want to get this straight. You are not taking anything to change the color of your skin?
Oh, God, no.
You did not purposely?
We're trying to control it, and using makeup evens it out because it makes blotches on the skin, and I have to even out my...
Somehow people still are not, they don't feel they've heard everything about the whiteness of your skin, and that it's not somehow a choice on your part, along with the makeup, to be, is it to be neither black or white, neither to look completely male, to be in the androgynous zone? I think they want to know, it is a decision on your part some way, the way you look. Where does it come from?
I think it creates itself, nature.
He's an artist. He has every right, and he is constantly remodifying something or changing it or reconstructing it or, you know, working on some imperfection that he thinks needs to be worked on. If he sees something he doesn't like, he changes it. Period. He re-sculpted himself. He's an artist.
I might want to put a red dot right there one day. But 2 eyes right here.
Do you wish you were the color you were again?
Do I wish I was the color? That color. Nature that. I love black. I love.
Do you wish
black.
you were that way?
I envy her because she can tan and I can't.
Why are you wearing a silk mask in your latest appearances?
Because with time, my skin condition has gotten worse. I hate to say it. I have vitiligo, and I'm completely allergic to the sun. I'm not even supposed to be outside, actually. Even if I'm in the shade, the sun rays can destroy my skin. Crazy stories that people have created. Things I wanted to set straight in an interview.
Do you know with whom this interview was?
I think it could have been Diane Sawyer, whatever the interview was that I wanted to do. I wanted to set the record straight, that if people hear a lie long enough, people believe it, that people have lied on me. I'm a black American and I'm proud of it, and I'm honored of it. Which was a rumor. They said I was putting on cream to make myself lighter. That's not true. I have vitiligo.
The beginnings of the vitiligo started happening relatively early. You know, he even was trying to hide it from me. He tried to hide it for quite a while. You know, we'd always try to cover with makeup and even out his skin tone and everything until it just got so extensive. I mean, it's all over his body. We were always trying to hide it and cover it for the longest time until he just had to tell Oprah and tell the world, listen, I'm not trying to be white. I have a skin disease.
Exposure.
You know, in the beginning, I tried to cover the light spots to the darkest part of his skin, but then it became so extensive that we had to go with the lighter part of his skin because his whole body was reacting. He'd have to be in complete, full body makeup every inch of his body, you know, so it was easier to make the transition to him being to the lighter shade that he is.
I reach out my hand to you. I have faith in all you do.
reach out my hand to you. I have faith in all you do. Just call my name and I'll be there. Yeah. Just let me feel your heart with joy and laughter. Together this was all I'm after. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. Oh.
Well, I don't know. Anybody who knows Michael Jackson knows how sensitive and compassionate this guy is in many ways, and I can't imagine that he would come up with a skin disease as emotionally devastating as this one and use it to exploit it for his own purposes. So, yes, I believe him.
Michael.
I met Michael because someone had brought him into my office. I walked into the room with Michael, and I took one look at him, and I said, "You have lupus erythematosus." Now, this was a long word.
Lupus.
Lupus, yes. I mean, because he had red butterfly rash, and he also had severe crusting you could see on the anterior portion of his scalp. I mean, I always am very visual. I mean, I'm a person who would look at the lips of Mona Lisa and not see her smile. I would see the lips.
Was he there because of that condition?
He was there only because a very close friend of his had told him to come see me about problems he had with his skin, because he had severe acne, which many people, yeah, he did, that many people made fun of, and he used to remember trying to clean it off, and he'd gone to these doctors who really hurt him very much, and he was exquisitely sensitive to pain. So he walked into my office. He had this terrible thing wrong with his skin. So I said, when you have thick crusting of your scalp and you have some hair loss. He said, well, how do you know this? I said, because the natural course of lupus. So I then did a biopsy. I diagnosed lupus, and then our relationship went from there.
What is vitiligo?
It's a loss of pigment cells, and the pigment cells, for every 36 normal cells in your body, you have one pigment cell pumping pigment into them. Unfortunately, it's an autoimmune disease, and lupus is an autoimmune disease, and they sometimes go together because you make antibodies against your pigment cells.
Did Michael have it?
Absolutely. We biopsied.
What causes it?
You're caused by your immune system. And your immune system destroying your pigment cells.
Do black people have it more than white people?
No, but it's just more visible on black people because they have a dark skin. The other thing is, it certainly occurs with a family history, and I believe one of Michael's relatives did in fact have vitiligo.
How bad was his?
Well, his was bad because he began to get a totally speckled look of his body. And
all over his body?
All over his body, but on his face, significantly on his hands, which are very difficult to treat.
So let's clear up something. He was not someone desirous of being white.
No. Michael was black. He was very proud of his black heritage. He changed the world for black people.
So how do you treat vitiligo?
Well, I mean, there's certain treatments. You have one choice where you can use certain drugs called Sorilans and ultraviolet light treatments to try to make the white spots turn dark, or his became so severe that the easier way is to use certain creams that will make the dark spots turn light so you can even out the pigment.
So the decision there was he would go light.
Well, yeah, that's ultimately what the decision had to be, because there was too much vitiligo to deal with.
Otherwise, he would have looked ridiculous.
Well, you can't. He would have to wear heavy makeup on stage. It would be ridiculous, and he couldn't really go out in public without looking terribly peculiar.
How did you treat the vitiligo?
Well, we basically used creams that would even out the skin color and would destroy the remaining pigment cells.
And did his color change a lot over the years?
No, I mean, because once we got the color more uniform, it remained stable, but you still had to treat it because once in a while, and he had to also be extraordinarily careful with sun exposure, because there are a lot of things, and that's via the umbrellas all the time, because you have ultra-sensitive skin now.
So when you have vitiligo, you have it all your life?
Usually, almost uniformly. You don't just have a little bit of it. And it's most disconcerting, not in white people, but in black people, because you begin to look like a leopard.
Did he have blotches?
He had blotches, but we evened out almost all of them. But he was very, very devoted to treating it. I mean, he wanted to look well. He wanted to look well for one group of people, his fans. He wanted to embrace and love his fans more than any performer I've ever known.
Did he have hair?
He had lost a great deal. You forget this, first of all.
That was a Pepsi fire,
yeah,
right?
but then what happened is he used a great deal of what are called tissue expanders in his scalp, which are balloons that go up, blow up the scalp, and then what they do is they try to cut out the scar. But because he had lupus, what happened is every time they would do it, the bald spot would keep enlarging. So, I mean, he went through a lot of painful procedures with these tissue expanders until I put a stop to it. I said, no more tissue expanders, because he had to wear a hat all the time, and it was really painful for him.
So what would without the hat, what would he look like?
He would have a big raised ball on the top of his head because this device would expand the tissue which you cut out. But his skin you would get too much stretch back of the scar. You understand?
Did you see him without his hat?
Of course I did. But it would have stretch back of the scar, meaning the scar would get worse after they removed it. And I had to put a stop to it. So I told Michael, we have to stop this. And that's when I fired this plastic surgeon altogether. I said, I can't deal with this anymore, so we're going to deal with me as your doctor, and you can't find another doctor if you want to work with him.
What? Yeah. Let's fast forward. You saw him the Monday before he died.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
What was the purpose of the visit?
He came to me because basically I was sort of rebuilding his face because he had severe acne scarring. He had scarring from having a lot of cosmetic surgery. And my expertise is like it is with every one of my patients. My patients are my treasures. And I was rebuilding his face so he looked much more normal. I mean, contrary to what people said, he could not take off his nose. His nose was attached, but it looked too small. And I just was trying to get him ready to do the concert because in the way he looked in his face, he wanted to be absolutely as perfect as it could be.
What is lupus?
Lupus is an autoimmune disease, as you said, where the immune system, one of our larger systems that's designed to protect us against germs and viruses, actually attacks our own body cells and tissues.
And let's talk about some of the consequences of that, because vitiligo, Michael Jackson acknowledged having vitiligo, which is splotchiness of the skin. Is this lupus related?
This can be autoimmune disease related. Many patients with lupus have vitiligo, but he had a form of skin lupus called discoid lupus, which affects about 40% of the patients with lupus, and you do get depigmentation.
It does splotch your skin. Now, let's take a look at the umbrella, because you have said, one thing you say to lupus patients, don't let the sun hit your skin.
That's right. That's right.
So that umbrella, would you carry it out in the sun? May have been just that.
That's exactly correct.
And then there was something else that intrigued us, because Cicely Tyson, as we know, wonderful actress, said something that startled us yesterday. She said, my designer also designed for Michael. All of a sudden he said to me, I'm doing this glove for Michael. Michael was beginning to develop the vitiligo. It started on his hand. The glove that he wore, the one glove, came into being to camouflage that. Does it often start on the hand? Would that surprise you?
That's right. It's very interesting. It affects the neck, the face, the upper part of the wrists, and the groin. And vitiligo is pretty common of and by itself, but with autoimmune disease, it's very common.
A couple of other things. The fibromyalgia, which, as we know, is a terrible aching in the joint. We saw him at times in a wheelchair.
Yes, it's conceivable. Now, quite a few of my patients have fibromyalgia. About 50%, I would say, suffer from that. And it's possible, and that's a terrible chronic pain condition, as you said. He may have suffered from that.
Sleeping disorder. We know that one of the reasons they are alleging that he had this anesthesia was he could not sleep.
Very common to be an insomniac and have diseases like discoid or systemic lupus.
And hair loss? Because a lot of people have presumed that the hair that he had was in fact a wig.
We call the hair loss alopecia, and it is also very common, particularly in discoid lupus. And as you may recall, that he had that commercial accident here in New York City, and that's probably the time when the discoid lupus was discovered on his scalp.
That's right. It allegedly burned his scalp. Final thing.
Let's take another look at that newly revealed footage from Michael Jackson's 1984 Pepsi commercial shoot and the accident that he later admitted triggered his use of painkillers. Did Michael ever talk to you about that incident?
He did talk to me about that incident. He was obsessed after that about his appearance also, about the fact that he was disfigured. We had long discussions about the fact that I felt that he had a lot of self-loathing, he had a lot of shame, and that his obsession with mutilation was part of his, childhood stress.
He was disfigured, or did he just lose hair?
No, he had lupus. He had extensive patches of white that were very disfiguring, and he had vitiligo. And these autoimmune diseases, by the way, Larry, there's a report in Psychosomatic Medicine this year that children who experienced a lot of trauma or stress or been physically or verbally abused in childhood will go on to get autoimmune diseases 20 years later, 30 years later.
Concerning
the lupus is an autoimmune disease, and he only had skin involvement, which had destroyed part of the skin of his nose, and his nasal surgeries and all were really reconstructive to try and look normal.
And all those nose reconstructions, you're saying, were a result of him treating his lupus?
The first one was to try and reconstruct from some scar tissue and destruction that had happened of the skin there, and it didn't work out very well, and all subsequent attempts, I believe, were attempts to still make it right. I think he was trying to look like a normal guy as best that he could.